It's my pleasure to introduce today Tommy Gelinas. Tommy's a business owner and avid collector. He was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, where he and his wife have raised their 4 children. Tommy's fascination with the history of the San Fernando Valley began at a very young age. He began collecting artifacts from our valley's past a little over 20 years ago, and now the collection is the largest of its kind pertaining to the San Fernando Valley and the surrounding areas. One of Tommy's dreams was not only to preserve and protect our local history, but to open a museum to showcase the collection. In late 2012, the Valley Relics Museum was established as a nonprofit and opened its doors to the public in October of 2013 as a spotlight on the Valley's amazing accomplishments and rich history. Tommy, welcome to our club, and we're looking forward to hearing about your collection and the history of the Valley.
Awesome.
Thank you. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name's Tommy, and I'm the curator and founder of the Valley Relics Museum. People usually ask me to leave, so the fact that you actually invited me to stay, I'm very honored. Being born and raised in the Valley was quite unique. And, I remember my dad asking me before he passed. My mom and dad had 9 children, married 63 years before they passed. My dad came from Cohasset, the Boston area, at a young age. My mom came from the East Coast. She was born in Tennessee. They met at Republic Studios. My mom was a switchboard operator, and my dad was an inspiring actor that he achieved a few small parts, and they met, and they had 9 kids. So all 9 of us are born and raised in the Valley. And I remember my father asking me about 20 years ago, "So son, what have you been up to?" Now he knows that I got into the screen printing business, printing t-shirts, and I said, "Well, I've been collecting a lot of stuff, some artifacts and things like that." And he goes, "Oh really, from where?" And I go, "Well, the San Fernando Valley." And he goes, "Why the Valley?" As most people say. Charity does begin at home. And the rich history of the San Fernando Valley has been buried, and it has been forgotten, and it has taken a back door. It's become the butt of many jokes. But for me, it's important. I'm 52 years of age, and as a kid growing up near Dennis Park, Mission Hills area, there was a place called Uncle Ben's Kittyland. And then over by Uncle Ben's Kittyland was this place called the Bear Pit. And over down the street by the Bear Pit was the double single arch McDonald's that was just where you would walk up. And then there was another place that was a family favorite called Zodi's, and then Whitefront, and then Jimco, and then Fedco, and then Big A, and then there was this thing called Devonshire Downs. And they had this wonderful thing when I was 4 years old, dropping off some of my brothers and sisters, called Newport 69. And Newport 69 was one of the first outdoor festivals where Jimi Hendrix, The Who, Led Zeppelin, Jethro Tull, Janis Joplin, thousands and thousands and thousands flocked to Northridge for one of the first outdoor festivals. And from that festivals, prior to Woodstock, prior to the Monterey Pop Festival, we learned what to do and what not to do. And that type of history a lot of people don't know about. A lot of people don't know that we produced 62 million Chevrolets out of Van Nuys, home of the Camaro, Firebirds, Corvairs. It brought a lot of people from all over the world, like the early gold rush days, to bring their family, to have a good job, raise a family, buy a home at a decent price, and live in a very safe place called the San Fernando Valley, like Bing Crosby used to sing about. I call the San Fernando Valley the world's most famous valley, and a lot of people go, "What an order, really, the most famous valley?" And I said, absolutely. We had Marantz, Super Scope, JBL. We had Lockheed building some of the best warplanes that defended the United States for our freedom. another place out here called Rocketdyne, and other companies that made rocket engines that gave us the satellites that we have today, put man on the moon. Linton, once again, General Motors. Then we invented the BMX movement. Redline, Mongoose, Champion, Gary Littlejohn, Robinson. All those BMX bikes were all made in the Valley back in the 70s, and today BMX, that sport, is an Olympic sport. And I'm not even mentioning the fact that Bad News Bears was made in the Valley, or Karate Kid, or E.T. But the Valley has produced so much cool pop culture stuff. But to really kind of put the nail in the coffin is that where in the world that you can go anywhere, I don't care if it's New York, Chicago, or Switzerland, where you can open a yearbook and go, oh, Robert Redford went to Van Nuys. Oh, look, Norma Jean, Marilyn Monroe, went to Van Nuys. John Elway, Granada Hills. Barbara Sandwick, Liberace. Johnny Cash lived in Encino. Ronnie James Dio lived in Encino. Reseda for a lot of years. I can go on and on. Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, James Cagney's ranch up at off Old Melvany. Jack Oakey and his estate right there. The Marx Brothers are the Marwick Ranch, which was part of Barbara Sandwick's partnership with one of the Marx Brothers. And I can go on and on. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were actually married in Canoga Park and had their ranch right at the border of Chatsworth and Northridge, and that's where they lived prior to moving back to Beverly Hills and getting a divorce, or remarrying and then getting divorced. They lived in the Valley. I can go on and on. So why, out of everywhere in the world, where I can name hundreds and hundreds of the most famous people living in the San Fernando Valley? Because it was a safe place. It had a lot of horse property. It was rural. It was dirt roads. And it was a very, very nice place, safe place to live, where the stars could just go right over Laurel Canyon or the Cahuenga Pass into this place that looked like Kentucky, you know? And it was safe. And the stars loved us Valley kids because we were like huckabucks. We didn't bother them. We were very accepting. As a kid, I could drive around the Valley, no shirt, no shoes, no shirt, no helmet, get on my bike with Billy and Bobby, and we could ride over the whole valley on our Stingrays with the big, you know, handlebars and the banana seat, and we could ride for hours, and the only thing Mom would say is, be home before dark so you can have dinner. And it was such a safe place. And as I started to get older, I didn't know that Mr. Hertz, you know, Hertz Rent-A-Car, actually lived in the West Valley, and he had bought a huge amount of horse property when he came from the East Coast, from New York. And when Mr. Hertz was in New York, he worked for a used car sales guy, and he started buying some of those used cars and started painting these things called checkers all around, and started basically, came up with that whole taxi idea. And that's what he did. You know, he had a taxi cab service. And then he came to the San Fernando Valley and built his career out of the valley, which I thought was very interesting. He also built a bomb shelter, an $80,000 bomb shelter that was not only connected on his property because he was extremely paranoid of us being attacked by the Japanese. So he had a direct pipeline to not only the police department, but I think the state of emergency center. So if anything went wrong, he can hide out with about 5 or 6 people and live comfortably underground for a while. That bomb shelter's still there. It's on the Pinecrest property. But anyway, there's all these really cool backstories. There's all this history, and we do a lot of tours. And the Valley Relics, you know, museum, it's about community. It's about our history. I know for a fact, growing up, that people came here to have a good job, buy a home, and raise a family. Just a good white-collar situation. And people believed in the Valley. This is where they decided to make it their home, and our history slowly started to disappear. The architecture started to disappear, the drive-in movie started to disappear, The White Front started to disappear. The Devonshire Downs started to disappear. The bicycle track started to disappear. Red Line BMX company moved out. Mongoose moved out. General Motors moved out. And then because they moved out, Mike's Pizza left the valley and went belly up. But there's just so much rich history. And so what I started to do is about 20 years ago, as people were moving into the valley, I would constantly try to explain to people what we used to have. What used to be here. That's the big thing. Did you know, you could stand in front of a field, you know, what used to be here, you know, what used to be there, and it's all gone. We had some of the most amazing architecture in the San Fernando Valley, some of the best businesses here, some of the most beautiful homes. It's all gone, so there's no preservation. There isn't any preservation. I do a lot of tours with a lot of underprivileged kids, a lot of kids that suffer from drugs and alcoholism because it starts off with bad behavior, then it gets into drug addiction, and then you help them with the drug addiction, then what do you have? Bad behavior. And we pull in a lot of different volunteers. We give back to the community. We go out and we educate the community, and so it's not just about, you know, just talking about the valley history, but where did it go? So I set out on a mission to figure out where it went. And as I started to look for books, I started to go online. There wasn't anything. There is now. A few history books that recycled the same story. Placerita, gold was discovered, Tongva Indians, Chatsworth Bell Canyon, Mr. Mulholland, brought water. You know, things like that I've read over and over, but they don't teach in school. And I'm like, wow, so no one really cares about the valley's past. And I've had arguments in meetings like this with the city, with the schools, and one kid one time got up and says, I know all about valley history. And I go, you do you? He goes, yeah, I do. I'm about 12, 13 years old, and I go, well, who's Bob Hope? And he goes, I know. And I go ahead. He goes, the airport in Burbank. He was right. But anyway, so as I started to search, I didn't realize that Woodland Hills used to be the town of Girard. And then I didn't realize that the town of Canoga Park was the town of Owensmouth. And then I didn't realize that Granada Hills was the town of Zelza on North Los Angeles. I didn't realize that the town of Lankershim became North Hollywood, because the town of Lankershim really wanted to enterprise on what was happening in Hollywood with all the glitz and glam and excitement. They figured, we'll call it North Hollywood. I had a customer one time says, hey, I'm in your neighborhood. Can I stop by your shop? I go, where are you at? They go, I'm on right off of Gower. Now I'm in North Hollywood. It works. I said, well, North Hollywood's not really Hollywood. Well, you're North Hollywood, right? So I get it. So they changed the name. But there's so much different type of history like that that's really cool. And, you know, Mr. Lankershim, you know, trying to raise chickens and all types of livestock, not realizing that the valley suffers from many droughts, and that a lot of that stuff didn't work out, and found out that actually growing wheat and importing wheat to Europe, that he became one of the first entrepreneurs of making money off of sending wheat overseas. Matter of fact, he's the one that carved out the 405 to get over to the Santa Monica Pier, to get that in the 1800s, to get it out of here. So when you see that, you know, 405, some people claim that that's where the Spaniards came and discovered the San Fernando Valley. But what the Spaniards didn't tell anybody, that there were these people called Indians already living here. The indigenous type of people that love nature, that love the mountains, that took care of each other, having their little teepees and homesteads and things like that, not bothering anybody many, many years beforehand. But they didn't think that their land or their homes were going to be taken away. They never took a stick and drew a line saying, well, this belongs to me. You know? So the Spaniards discovered the valley, and supposedly that's right at where the 405 comes over the hill. But Mr. Lankershim and him trucking that wheat over the hill is what really carved that path over the hill. Anyway, so the San Fernando Valley Relics started, myself, started searching for what happened to our past and what is the true story. And then what happened to the town of Girard, what happened to the town of Owensmouth. For example, the town of Owensmouth, if there was a town there, then where did it go and is there anything left? Well, Owensmouth was really named after the Owens River, and back many, many years ago, you could see that this was an open land, and when Mr. Mulholland brought the water over from the Owens River, it was the mouth of the Owens River, Owens Mouth. It was where the water was, the mouth of the water. And the Jans company that developed Van Nuys, that originally made a lot of their money developing Westwood on the other side of the hill, decided to come in and put a bid in and develop not only Van Nuys, the town that was started right, but also the town of Owensmouth. And at some point they needed some type of street to connect Van Nuys to Owensmouth. Van Owen. So from the town, and it was spelled for many years V-A-N space capital, space capital O-W-N. Van Owen, from Van Nuys to Owensmouth. So anyway, there's all this, and the history goes so deep, and I know I got a few minutes, but some really cool tidbits of Valley history, but where is it? And why isn't it documented? And why isn't it taught? I mean, considering we built some of the best warplanes, and so many cars, and I mean, come on, Marantz, Super Scope, Infinity, JBL, they're all gone, but man, that was like the best electronics ever. And the list goes on. So as I started to find out, if they're like, so with the town of Girard, which is now Woodland Hills, the guy that kind of decided to build that town built a whole facade, made it look like an Arabian town. He built this whole town in the corner of the valley, which is now Woodland Hills, over by Topanga and Ventura Boulevard, and he made it seem like there was a whole city. And there was big columns and big domes, and he would offer free rides from LA into the new boom town called Girard. And he started selling lots where you could come and buy a house, we'll build a house, raise chickens and cows and have a farm and make your investment here. And people started buying those lots, and people started moving in. And then summer came, and then there was no water, and there was not people really living in that facade. And then there was no cement on the valley floor, so now you have not only tumbleweeds knocking you over, but you have dust storms, no water, and you couldn't do anything. So our founder of Girard packed his stuff and left, and they never found him. And then eventually they named it Woodland Hills, and then the town of Owensmouth, with the St. Francis Dam disaster, the town of Owensmouth wanted to disassociate itself with any type of negativity and change it to Canoga Park. They should put it back to Owensmouth. It would really help a lot of the community. But anyway, so as I started to look for the history, I came across a book, a Congress book from the 1800s, where they sent out a surveying team, a few horses, and artists and scientists that went all up and down the coast into the valley, and they hand drew and hand painted what was in the valley in the early 1800s. And they drew pictures of the mountainscapes, the plants, the water, the people, and I'm like, wow, like that's some real history there. And then I came across another book that's out of print, written in the 30s, another history book, and then I found another history book. And then one day I was, coming across something, and someone says, well, my mom lived in the town of Owensmouth. I have a map. And the next thing you know, I found a postcard of the town of Girard. And then next thing you know, I found postcards from the town of Owensmouth. And then I started putting this on social media about 15 years ago called Live Journal. And I started getting kids really, really interested in where they come from. And they had no idea. And then I found a really awesome picture of some cool cats playing at the Palomino Club back in 1950 in North Hollywood. And people were saying Johnny Cash played there, and Merle Haggard, I mean, you name it, Flying Burrito Brothers, and I'm like, yeah, they played there. And there was this guy, Nudie Cohn, the famous rodeo tailor that came from the Ukraine. And then he came here, and he made a deal with this young country star that was on his way to the top, but not yet, made an outfit. Next thing you know, this guy just blew up and started making Cadillacs with horns on it, silver dollars, he actually designed the mask for the Lone Ranger. He made the gold lame suit for Elvis Presley. He designed all the outfits for Roy Rogers, Dale Evans. He invented and coined the phrase rhinestone cowboy. And he did that all out of North Hollywood. And I'm talking from Mac Davis to Elton John, you name it. He made all their outfits. I actually have 2 of his cars there valued at about $500,000 in the museum, his personal outfits and some items from his stores. And then I put a search out, where's the Palomino signs? I get a call, someone says, you know, it's in the Country Western Museum. No, it's been in the dump. Years and years and years searching for that stuff. One day I get a phone call and some guy goes, hey man, I own all the Palomino signs. They've been in storage for about 30 years, come get them. So now the Palomino sign from 1950 that is about the size of this room is in the museum, and it lights up every Saturday and Sunday. Another thing, the mystery of the Porter Ranch horses. 2 horses to the entrance of Porter Ranch disappeared 1980 something, and they were gone. And I went out and I figured out where they were. And I found the Porter Ranch horses. One of them was thrown away. One went to like a kind of like some storage facility. One of the developers at Porter Ranch was able to pull them together. They went into a different storage. There's this whole lore of where they ended up, but no one's ever seen them. So everyone in the community thought that they were being lied to. A couple weeks ago, I found them in North Hollywood, being restored. They'll make it down to the museum the next couple of months. So all of a sudden, I started pulling together maps, books, postcards, signs, cars that pertain to our history, to the Valley's history. Old arcade games. So the museum is filled with neon from the 1940s. I don't know if anyone ever went to the Lancashire Theater off of Lancashire near Satakoy, but it opened 1946. The sign is 22 feet tall. I have that sign. The Palomino, Henry's Tacos, Love's Barbecue sign. The Mustang Liquor that was at Sherman Way near Canoga. That beautiful galloping horse I saved from going into the garbage. Van Nuys, Arby's, cruise night, Van Nuys. We stopped at Arby's. That's where we parked our hot rods. 30 feet tall, was on its way to the dump. And I was able to call Arby's, and 45 minutes before it was crushed, I was able to get the sign back here to the Valley. That's sitting in my parking lot at my business. So it's important for me. This is where I'm born, this is where I'm raised. Charity does begin at home. But the purpose is to make it available to the community, make it available to the kids, and I think it's the only museum of its kind that represents, you know, pop culture history that made an impact in the entire planet because of the movies we produced, the cars we built, the airplanes we made, the rocket engines we produced, many of the circuit boards and many of the electronics that are in the market today. And I expressed that and that education through our collection. I have close to now, I have 5 kids now. I had to update that, it's been a few months. And close to 20,000 rare artifacts from the 1800 documents, photographs, glass slides from the 1800s up into the 80s. Representing the movies, the aerospace industry today. Before I came here, a gentleman that has worked at Lockheed for 45 years is putting a whole Lockheed exhibit in the museum as we speak. But the altruistic style.
Well, just maybe a couple questions would help focus some of the issues. Like, where is it, and when can we visit, or when do people
So
visit?
everyone, you've got a flyer. We just recently opened up, it's only open on Saturdays because it's a nonprofit, and what we do is we do fundraisers, we rent out the space for money, we have a really awesome online store, we sell retro style shirts from establishments that were in the Valley. So we're open during the summer, Saturday and Sunday. It's open Saturday 10 to 3, it's free. Sunday 10 to 2, it's free. And it's a museum that's actually really fun for kids. So if you have grandkids or kids and you're worried about taking them somewhere, or like you're not going to get to enjoy it, we actually have really old arcade games from the 80s that operate, that are free to play. So the kids have plenty to do. There's over 100 BMX bicycles that the Valley had built, a bunch of red lines, mongooses, champions, and stuff that the kids rode in the Valley that are actually famous racers now. But so that's what the thing's about. Like right now what we do is we hold AA meetings there once a week so we can give back to the community and help some of these kids get off of heroin and alcohol. We have them volunteer. Once they are, once they get about 2 years of recovery, then we'll have them volunteer. We help them to get jobs, but the main thing is to get them off of that nasty stuff. We work a lot with the schools doing tours and helping educate if it's a certain subject or certain, DreamWorks came and brought 40 people for a tour, and then they donated $500 for the tour, but they brought their sketch pads because they wanted their staff to be inspired. And then we do that a lot with Pierce College, a lot of the schools, but really anyone that's interested in being educated. So it's the Valley Relics Museum. We're a nonprofit. Our mission endeavor is to cherish what we had, preserve what's left. We collect history, we save history, we preserve history, and then we share it with the community, and we educate in the process. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Do you happen to have anything in the museum or a possibility of getting something that was actually put in use by NASA through their contractors and
Believe it or not, I did try to get the rocket engine when they moved, but they said I couldn't have it. My father-in-law worked at Boeing for many years, and what's starting to happen is Lockheed Martin does donate to different military museums, and then they have recently discovered through the gentleman that's exhibiting all this stuff that they would like to possibly maybe help with when we get we're looking for a new space. That's kind of what we're going to be doing this next couple of months with fundraising. Is there's about 280,000 fans on Facebook and about 100,000 fans on Instagram, and what it is, it's a bunch of people that are really upset that the Valley has kind of taken a beating with its history, with its culture, with its architecture. So I have these history watchdogs that anytime anything is like maybe a home that was built in the 20s might be endangered, they call me because they know I have a lot of ties with the city. The city knows that the community looks to me. They have a great relationship with the community. So the city actually allows me to get signs and kind of bypass certain permits and use cranes as long as it's going into the museum. But yeah, just to answer your question, I'm always reaching out, I'm always asking, and I think what I think would be cool as within this next 6 months to a year, when we get we're a little under 5,000 square feet, we're looking for 12,000 square feet. And it would be nice to have an airplane that was built by Lockheed, and it would be nice to have that Camaro that was built in Van Nuys, but I think that's a real museum. I mean, I do have actually three Helms trucks, but I don't have enough room for them. I do have about 30 neon signs that I don't have the room in, but they're all from the Valley. But yeah, absolutely.
With Barris's passing recently, are you going to have anything as far as Barris goes? I know Nudies and Barris kind of, I'm from the North Hollywood area, so I grew up in that area. My friend's father actually rented out Barris's one-bay stall back there for a long time, so we got to sit in the Batmobile and Monster-mobile and all those kind of cool things. But is there any ties with you guys as far as Barris goes and things like that?
A lot of hands in that. And what I like to do is, in some cases, I ask where I need to ask. I put my paws into something where I need to. And it's funny you say that, is that was a situation that so many people, like Galpin Ford with their, I don't know if anyone knows, they have a really awesome museum called GAS, and it's Galpin Autosport. And what happens a lot of times is when people start doing that, it actually puts some people back for a minute and says, hold on, we're not willing to part with stuff. And somehow, some way, I always end up like with the Palomino sign, with the Henry's Taco sign, with a lot of artifacts. There was recently a sign in Santa Fe Springs called Premier Lanes. It's from 1950. It's an actual Googie And if anyone's familiar with Googie, he was an architect, and anything that's Googie is protected. The sign went up in the 50s. It has these stars shooting off it. Sign is about as wide as this room and taller than this room. But as an example, LA Conservancy prevented it from being destroyed. They put a fence around it and then have not kept an eye on it for over 17 years. So I started working with the city of Santa Fe Springs, and yesterday we actually removed it, and we saved a real big piece of Southern California history. And I feel that even though I started approaching them 3 years ago, introduced myself, let them know what I was up to, people came down to the museum and really saw the collection and the passion that I got the phone call, it's okay to come remove it with our permission, we'll waive any permits or anything else, and we want the Valley Relics Museum, us Valley kids, you know, that people love so much. So a lot of that stuff, to answer like the question, is there is ties there. The main guy that was like Barris's like right-hand guy has been to the museum many times, and says, you know, I have stuff and stuff that I'll probably bring to you. You should just be patient with that, and then maybe we can just do some exhibit stuff. But we're, you know, the 5,000 square feet, we have so much stuff in there that it's getting a little, you know, it's crowded. So it's a fun museum, and I do have this facility where I store stuff. But I don't want to keep storing. We want to expand, especially with the kid programs and the senior citizen programs. You know, we do art days with the senior citizens that get to come. We do a tour, and then we do art, and then we also do local things where kids come in. They learn an Indian, like a tongva, like an Indian song, and they make beads. But we usually try to help the kids out that don't get the opportunity to do fun stuff like that. So that space is really important for us to expand those kid programs. So. But yeah, that.
Did you ever feel that where you started, just trying to keep our culture together and this path you went on? Did you ever feel like it was going to be where you are today?
No, absolutely not. Not 20,000 items later. And the fact is that the stuff is so huge and it's so massive. When you stand there, a lot of kids come, and then a lot of people bring their parents, like someone like you bringing your parents in there, like let's say 80s or 90s, and a lot of people go, I'm very emotional being here because it's all the stuff we grew up with. White Horse Inn sign, that's 12 feet tall, come on, with the door, and the cupola that was on top. You walk in, you see the White Horse Inn, it's like, you know, or the Palomino, I played there, you know, and so it's a very emotional place. But you know, I think that we deserve a museum, a real museum in the Valley, and somewhere where people can go and enjoy that. So, but yeah, so we're always open, but people know who we are, and a lot of people don't, but it's growing every day. And I would really encourage, if you go to our website, it gives you a little insight to just what's inside the museum. There's a lot of photos, so it kind of gives you a little bit better idea.
One quick question.
Sure.
What's still up right now that you wish to have in the museum, that you're waiting on for them to put?
Well, I don't want anything to really ever come down. The problem is that the Valley, there's no one here keeping an eye on anything.
Okay. So
you see something like the White Horse Inn sign, 20 years that sign stayed up there and the building stayed abandoned. I tried getting the sign for almost 20 years. So it was coming down one day, and I had to almost say, hey, there's Indian burial ground here, and I'm going to call the city and stop construction unless you let me have the sign. So I paid the guy $1,500. I took the sign and was on my way, but come on, 20 years. Two things. The Paul Bunyan, right? That's right there, Alpha Sepulveda, right by the Foster Freeze, where I got all the signs from, right where, you know, right over by where Alpha Beta kind of used to be. But the Paul Bunyan that was holding at one time a muffler and then a tire, and then the genie, the Carpentier genie, which is about, people don't realize those things are about 25 feet tall. But those are two items I think should stay up. But man, there's none of them left, and they were actually, both of those were made in Venice, California in the 60s. And then, but those are two items. Those are like the only thing left in the Valley that we can kind of remember as kids. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be around here.